This is under number 9C, the Lakeland Community Church, for the 6 hours of worship workshop in Flatiron Park on Saturday, July 5th. I'm sorry, I don't know much about it, but Saturday, July 5th is one of the busiest Saturdays in downtown Lake Geneva. And I'm not sure if they're closing roads or not closing roads or what's all involved here, but I think for the businesses of downtown Lake Geneva to take up a lot of parking spots on that day, maybe they could choose another day. Second point on the Hillmore, as I attended these planning meetings, one at the school and one at the police workshop here, it just seemed like the overwhelming consensus of the people there were leave Hillmore zone the way it is. Quote, government should be of the people, for the people, by the people. And maybe we should listen to the people if that's what they want. I know there might be some other things that go there. I'm not really sure about it, but that's my thoughts. Thank you very much for your time.
5 South Lakeshore Drive. So of course it's item 11G, some points. I did email the city attorney this last week after the finance meeting with some questions about procedure, because it seems now that you have 3 different procedures going on. You have one for the Plan Commission, that when a motion fails, it's done. You have one for the council, that when you look at your own agenda, it says reconsider business from a previous meeting. That means depending on the vote, you can bring it back if you have a motion to reconsider, but it's not at the same session. And then you have what happened at the finance meeting where the motion failed and it should have stayed there, but without a motion for reconsideration, it is now in front of the council. So I would urge the council to not take up this issue tonight because it's procedurally incorrect. And I've asked for that decision in writing so that of course we can challenge it later. Point number 2 is the document that I just passed out to the council, which is paperwork they already had. One is the proposal from Brian Munson, who's an employee at Vanderwall and Associates. And in 2016, a feasibility study was presented. It was voted down, but for 3 months' work in 2016, the task was only going to cost $15,000. At the bottom of the sheet, also labeled number 1, you can see that for 1 month less work, 2 months, the proposal is doubled at almost $30,000. So fiscally, that doesn't really make sense to actually have to pay more for less work, but that's up to you to decide. The second issue is in the middle of the front of the sheet, and that is actually what you're buying for the $30,000. So you'll have a concept plan, and it starts with 3 plans, but it's narrowed down to 1 concept plan at a working session. And that 1 plan will then be presented to the public at a special open house on Halloween, so you can wear your Halloween costumes. Maybe there will be candy. But why are you bringing it to an open house if you only have 1 choice? Why are you showing us 1 choice? Why don't we get to look at least the 3 maps? That seems odd. And indeed, it's very odd if you flip it over and look at the back, with the timeline that was approved, part of it, by the Plan Commission. Now we have an additional timeline on the bottom. It's out of the process. This does not follow the comprehensive plan process. You did not let 2 of your fellow aldermen let Sean Kelly speak and present our map for the city on the current zoning. The city attorney said that it was outside of the comprehensive planning process. Well, so is this. You can see by the documentation and by the map itself, the timeline, it's outside of the process, a clear violation of the process. So please vote this down. And just so it's clear, other things that can go on in addition or in place of the items that we have on the Kelly map, ice castles as Rick mentioned, it's already zoned for ice castles. If you're still looking for a spot, I'm sure the city administrator can give Jesse Stone the developer Freed's phone number, because we're depriving that developer of lease money and certainly purchase money because it's zoned for that already. So give this developer a chance to make some money on it by offering them ice castles. Also, if it's preserved in this fashion, there are other people and other things that could go on there. The Y had an issue because they were forced into a development map that wasn't even approved. The YMCA could have fit the Y on here, but they were told no because they were shown a different map. So they're forced to go outside of our city. And the final issue is the money. $30,000 is a lot of money, and in fact, it's more than half of the price of our share, as Alderman Skates knows, for the dredging for Starry Stonewort. Why are we not paying for that, no matter what the cost? But certainly, this portion of it can more than adequately cover it. So an analogy, if my house is on fire, I'm not gonna go buy paint to paint the front door. We need to take care of Starry Stonewort, not the developer. Vote no on item 11G. Thank you.
I'll probably reiterate some of the things I mentioned about a month ago. I'm not here because of what could take place out at Hillmore. I'm here basically to give you some assistance and some guidance, because procedurally, I think we have some problems. First of all, I have a problem with the concept plan. Only because anything that you decide on that could affect the current zoning on the Hillmore land could be construed as contract zoning. It would lead right to it. Anybody has their phones and would like to Google the definition of contract zoning? It's a paragraph, read it, and it falls right into this, and that could happen. Secondly, the $30,000 that are going to be expended here, taxpayers' money, for the benefit of a private developer. It's unheard of. It's not even a budgeted item. It's money that out of a whim, we're going to pay for a private developer's benefit. That could be construed as mishandling funds. Could be misappropriation of funds. These are the things I want you to be careful of. Thirdly, Vanderwall and Associates. Nothing personal, but they have a contract with the city. Anything they do over and above, they're charging you. And they're going to charge you $30,000 to do this concept plan. I think that's a breach in contract. And I think once you reach that point, you have to bid it out. So I would recommend that you bid it out. Maybe you'll get it for $15,000. But you can't just give gifts to people. And that's one. And it's at the taxpayer's expense. How do you eliminate this situation in the future? In my opinion, this is what I would do. Number one, I do nothing. Simple. If I was advising a city council, I would do nothing. You have a rural holding zoning. The developers bought that land under that zoning. What are your obligations? The developers need to bring their plans forward to the planning commission. This is what all developers do, except Hummel. And then you act on it accordingly. You notify the public, you have public hearings. This is the way these things are taken care of. You should never be in a position like this. Never. And another recommendation, I would get rid of staff. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying fire them. Get rid of that situation with staff. Somebody here is making decisions somebody with authority is making decisions, and other people have to pay for it. This is the way I see it. Otherwise, none of this would be before us today. You have a developer that comes to the city of Lake Geneva. He belongs in the building inspector's office, filling out an application for his development. And the building inspector will guide him. And then it goes in front of the planning commission. Again, I would get rid of these meetings behind the closed doors with staff. Somebody's making decisions here. And that's why you're in the position you're in today. That's my thing. Think about this tonight, because these are the things that you're facing. It's very important. So let your heart tell you what to do. Thank you for the time.
I can't even believe I'm standing here talking about this one more time. I think this is like the 30th appearance I've made in front of the Council of Planning Commission regarding Hillmore, and I'm starting to get just a little bit dizzy over the whole thing. I mean, I can't remember which feasibility study we're voting on. We just voted on a feasibility study, what, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we said, no, we're not gonna, you don't need to do a feasibility study. We know we can do a Hillmore. That was supposed to be the end of it. Lo and behold, on last Friday, we come up with this little gem of a document. August 28th, what, 11 days ago. No, we're not going to do a feasibility study. Now what we're going to do is we're going to actually develop a concept plan for the developer. And I say it is a done deal. They've got program goals for the project. The language here, working session with Van der Waal and Associates will lead a working session at a joint meeting of the Common Council and Planning Commission to present the concept plan alternatives, and then determine the desired design direction for the one preferred concept plan to be shared at a public open house. It's a done deal. This is saying, okay, this is what we're going to do for the developer. We're going to develop a concept plan for him. It's determined. It's going to be a joint meeting, and that's the end of it. So we've got a developer who, by the way, is a bully. He bought a piece of property out of bankruptcy, came to Lake Geneva. He knew what he was buying. He knew what the zoning was. He knew what the problems might be. And he presented a development plan and lost. And he was very upset about that. So what did he do? He very angrily filed this lawsuit, frivolous, ungrounded lawsuit. The city was in its 100% right in turning that development down. Had no legal impediments to that at all. But he files a frivolous lawsuit and asking for what? $55 million. That's what bullies do. He's going to scare the heck out of you. And he has scared the heck out of you. I know he has. And now, okay, so just months before the comprehensive plan is supposed to be revisited, he decides he's going to drop his lawsuit. Because, well, of course, it's frivolous. But our attorney, Mr. Worth, the insurance company, says, we're going to be cooperative with him. We're going to play nice in the sandbox because he dropped his lawsuit. This is being cooperative. This is playing nice in the sandbox. It's a done deal, and I'd be very, very careful with this. Now, some of you who say, well, Hillmore, many people in this community want Hillmore to be developed. All the meetings that I went to, I heard not one person express the viewpoint that they wanted Hillmore to be developed either commercially or residentially. We all know that we don't need any more residential, we don't need any commercial at that spot. So why on earth are we even considering a concept plan that will open up the door for commercial and residential development? for one reason, as I see it, one reason and one reason only. We're afraid this bully is going to refile his lawsuit. And I realize that that's scary, but that's what this is all about, in my opinion. And it seems like it's pretty clear. I would be very, very careful in your decision tonight. Think about it very carefully, because I think you're on a very legal, slippery slope in this particular concept plan thing that's before you tonight. Thank you very much.
Charlene Klein, 817 Wisconsin Street. My remarks, of course, are about item 11G. Not to your surprise, I'm sure. I want you to think back to 2 years ago, and please remember that your city council voted against changing the land use on the Hillmore property. Yes, it changed back in 2005 when a developer bought it. And since then, 2 other developers have come forth after it reverted back to its current land use. I guess back in 2005, the concept of let's build more houses, let's have more stores was the popular way to believe. But now we know better. Now we've become more cognizant of retaining our ecological and natural resources and protecting our small city atmosphere, as it says in our city motto, and denying this overdevelopment of our natural lands. Your taxpayers deserve better. To spend money on a conceptual plan to benefit a developer is going to lead us down a very, very slippery slope in the future. The Friends of Hillmore brought a concept plan forth for private development, just one idea, and that one that would retain the current land use. I'm sure, just as some of the other people have stated, there are other concepts as well for private development without changing the land use category. Put our valuable tax dollars to work on more important issues, like the invasive species that threatens our lake, or protecting our children in school, or providing our much needed city services and upgrading them. Please vote no this evening to approving the funds for this concept plan. Thank you.
Not a lot to say, except that with what Mr. Strauss was talking about with the alcohol, try to add up those numbers and see who will win the license. Second, we're at Hillmore again. I've been to the meetings, the plan meetings. Last week it was voted to send it to council without recommendation. Please vote no. This group bought this property knowing what it was zoned for. That's the bottom line. Thank you.
Alman, N1991 South Lakeshore Drive. I'm talking about the Hillmore issue. Mr. Hartz keeps saying that Hillmore is the largest parcel in the city. That's not true. It's not close to being true. The largest parcel in the city is owned by the Walworth Holdings Group, the Friends of Care for Lake Geneva. We own 511 acres, and we want a feasibility study too. Where's ours? Why aren't we getting one? You've never offered one. You don't even, you ignore that whole section of land. And what I gave all of the councilmen tonight is the lawsuit that Care for Lake Geneva brought against the city. And it was primarily because of a conspiracy by Mr. Hartz and Mr. Draper. They are the masters of contract zoning. In here, we give you the definition of contract zoning, and because it's illegal. The Supreme Court of Wisconsin has declared it illegal. So look through that lawsuit and see all the similarities. The only difference, the only change that Mr. Hartz and Mr. Draper have done is they got free to drop the suit first. You'll see when you read the lawsuit that there was a memorandum of understanding throughout the Hummel lawsuit. Now, nobody was allowed to see it, but the city council was. And Mr. Hartz and Mr. Draper said, no, there was no memorandum of misunderstanding. We had to go to court. It took months for us to get that memorandum. But it turns out there was a memorandum. It was stuck to the shoe of Mr. Draper. It was on the bottom of his shoe. And we found it. Now, we have another conspiracy. This is the Freed conspiracy. If you don't see the similarity, there's something wrong. And you're not being shown a memorandum of understanding, but you're being pleaded to in closed session to vote for this because the city needs this to get rid of Mr. Freed. Now, Freed came to the city. Now, he's a developer, a huge developer, but he gave the development to Mike Slavny. He told Mike Slavny, now, you give me a development that the city will approve. And he worked his darndest and he gave you a plan that he wanted you to approve. In fact, he got the Plan Commission to approve it because he didn't give them one of the any of the reasons to say no. Now that's a fraud. That's cheating. But that's not above Mr. Slavny. He's been doing that to this city for years. He's the city staff that everybody says, who's that person? Well, that person is Mr. Slavny. He's the one who guarantees that he'll get it passed because he's the authority that you rely on, that the Plan Commission relies on. They say, does this meet our standards, Mr. Slavny? Oh, yeah, sure it does. Or, well, in this case, we can make an exception. Or, we don't need to have a zone change. We can just do this project and say that we're doing it with SR4 zoning. Well, it's a zoning change, but he doesn't call it a zoning change. So this is another of those deals. Please say no. Thank you.